Okay, so I'm going to show you how to basically sketch out the still life in front of us. So you would have already learned how to find proportions, how to measure to get angles, about linear perspective, the use of vertical, horizontal edges or axis, x and y axis, as a form of placement, etc. And things that you have learned in drawing one that we are going to apply here for this particular drawing. Okay, so we're going to start off here, and I'm drawing on the vertical format here, and so I'm going to start off with basically the smallest object, which is this container. So you would have learned about perspective. So here I am drawing very quickly uh, a sort of a cylinder, a short cylinder, right? And I'm drawing here an ellipse, and it's oftentimes easier to draw a whole ellipse and to sort of get it gesturally. So the reason why I'm holding the pencil this way is because it allows me to create a sort of very gestural movement, because I'm using my whole arm to create this can right here. Okay. So notice that I'm drawing very gesturally, trying to figure out uh, the size as well as the form. So I'm just eyeballing it right now, sighting, and then what I can do is use my pencil, or if you have a kebab stick, to use it as a tool to figure out proportions. So I'm using this to measure the width of the container, and then placing it vertically to see how tall it is in comparison to the width. And when I'm doing this right now, it looks like it's 1 to 1. So the width is the same size as the height. So let me just try that and see whether that works. Whoa, yeah. All right. So so the sighting is good. So it feels like it's correct. So let me try that again very quickly. And notice how I'm holding my pencil this way. And the reason I do this is because then my pencil is always parallel to me. Okay. Um, and I can stabilize it as I measure. So I lined up this tip of the pencil with this corner of that container, and I move my thumb to mark the other end of it so that I can get the measurement of its width. And then I move my pencil and place it vertically against the container, and to see what the height is in comparison to the width. And I line this with the top of the container, and I just place it on in front of me, in front of the container, and it looks like, again, it's about 1 to 1. So width to height, it's about 1 to 1. So notice what I'm doing right now to double check to make sure that my proportions are right. And if your proportions are wrong, then you can readjust on your drawing. So it looks like it's right, okay? So then I'm going to draw the second part here, and notice that I'm drawing it so that it's translucent. So then I'm creating another ellipse. So now I have two ellipses, and I have basically drawn the cap right here. Okay? So draw right through the form as if it's a glass container or a glass object, and then you can always erase the part that you don't need later. It's always easier to draw a full ellipse and two ellipses overlapping to create the cap than to draw half an ellipse, because it's harder to draw a half ellipse correctly. Okay? It's always easier to draw a whole ellipse and then erase what you don't need. Okay, so then next, let's see. And now, of course, I'm wondering whether I should have moved this down a little bit, because I'm not sure whether I can fit this right here. And if I don't fit it right there, that would be a good demo here to show why you should measure beforehand. This is not. So look, with this angle here, how do I find this angle? And I'm doing my vertical horizontal axis. So right now I'm using my horizontal axis because I'm looking at it, placing my pencil on the object in front of me, and I notice that intersects, this angle sort of intersects right here on the object itself. So I do the same for my drawing, and I try to find this angle here. So very quickly, what I do is I rotate my pencil like on the surface of a clock, and I rotate it, and it's like about 10 o'clock, you know, and then I drop it down on my paper. So let me show you again. Hold your pencil straight parallel to you. So rotate it so it lines up with the edge of the bottom part of the cube. And then make sure that your arm is locked at the elbow, and then drop it down on the paper. Okay, do not move, because sometimes students will do is this: they'll find the right angle as they lined at the bottom with the bottom of the cube, for example, and then when they start to put it down on the paper, they start to rotate the pencil, and that hence that is now the incorrect angle. Another mistake that students tend to do is this: so they sit really close to the board, so you should sit about an arm's length away from your board or from your drawing paper, and they sit really close and they measure, so then the arm is outstretched, but then by the time they put it down on their paper, they bend at the elbow, or they are measuring and their arms are not stretched out and locked at the elbow. You must always make sure that if you're measuring angles and your proportions, make sure that your arm is outstretched, it's locked at the elbow, and then especially with the angles, make sure you're sitting about an arm's length away so that you could get the angle and then drop it comfortably on your paper. Okay, so do that a couple of times, and then make that line. So some students also tend to do this, that they drop it and they try and match it with what's on there. So they'll find the right angle with their pencil, and then when they drop it on their paper, they turn it to match the angle. So don't do that either, because you don't really care what's on here. You care what your pencil is measuring. That angle is the correct angle. So when you're doing this several times, you're double checking to see whether this is correct. So don't follow this. Follow your pencil, and once you drop it, make that correction if it's necessary. Okay, so let's see if we can continue this drawing right here. So you can use this then to measure this, okay? And you can use this to measure this, but you don't measure it this way. This is not the correct way. If you want to measure how far this is, you use the height. I can use the height of that object and measure it parallel to my paper. So what you do is that if you look at the objects in front of you, there are about 4 objects. What I normally do is find the smallest object and use it as a unit of measurement to measure everything else. What does that mean? It means that if I want to find out how big this cube is, I can use this container to see how big my cube is by using this as a unit of measurement, to see how many containers can fit into this cube, so I know how large this cube is in comparison to the container. Things that you have learned in drawing. Okay, here I'm using my vertical axis. So if I'm looking at this, I line my pencil with the edge of that cube to see where it intersects that container, and I notice it just intersects it a little bit, so I make sure when I'm drawing, I intersect it right here and not here, because if I did do this, then this would be incorrect. This is too much, too close, or too front of the cube, all right? So it's really just sitting next to the cube by the side. So let's see, I'll do this, and then I'm going to use this container, use my pencil again, and I'm going to measure to see how tall that cube is that's sticking out. So, all right, so if I'm measuring this, I notice that it's about this much on there. So it should be about this tall, okay? So find this angle. This is a perspective thing, all right? So if you look at this cube now is in 2-point perspective. Why do I say that? Because this width or depth, this depth and this width seems to be slowly receding towards a vanishing point on its respective vanishing point on its horizon or at your eye level, okay? So here we go. And I'm looking again at this space here, how much space this is. And you can always use this to measure the space so that you know where that corner is. And so let's just go ahead and do that. Okay. So it's almost half, but not quite. A little bit more than half. So let's do that very quickly. So it's half is about here. So it's a little bit more here. So it's like about here, give or take. All right. So this is how big that is. Well, it looks like I should have drawn smaller. So one of the ways that you need to do is that remember that before you start still life drawing, and notice that I didn't do that. And so this I think is a really good demo. I didn't do this at the very beginning. What you need to do is really, if you want to fit the entire 4 objects on this sheet of paper, and clearly I was so eager to start that I didn't really pay too much attention to it. I plopped this object on here thinking that, I'll be able to fit the whole thing in. Obviously, no, I'm running into some problems here. I may be able to fit in, but I'm not quite sure. I probably need to shift it. And I probably should have moved and made all this a little bit smaller and moved it down to the bottom. So if you want to draw the entire thing, what you need to do is take the smallest object, usually take the smallest object within the still life, use it as a unit of measurement. And this would be something you've learned in drawing 1. And what does that mean? It means that if you take, say this is the smallest object. Remember what I did just now? I measured the width, compared it to the height. Obviously, you can also measure the height, compare it to the width. And here in this case, we found out that this container, the width is 1 to the height, which is the same. So 1 to 1, okay? You must make sure that when you take the smallest object, when you start off with the smallest object and use it as a unit of measurement, you have to make sure that you pay attention to its height and its width. So some students will only measure the height of the object, forget the width, so that essentially only the height is right, and they don't bother so much of the width, or vice versa. You need to make sure the height to width relationship is correct, okay? So once you've done that, you can use this as a unit of measurement. What does that mean? It means then you can use either the height or the width to measure the cube. Or you can use the height or the width to measure the cylinder. Or you can use the height or width to measure the cube, and then use the height of the cube to measure the cylinder. And once you've got the cylinder, you can use the height of the cylinder to measure the other cylinder, the other spray can. So everything then will be in proportion to one another. Okay, and that is really important. Okay, so I've used that to measure the cube, starting to draw the cube. I've also used my horizontal axis to figure out the vertical axis to figure out where that edge should be, the horizontal axis to figure out where that corner should be. So use everything that you've learned, where things are touching, okay, and where it's lined up, okay. So you know that this corner here sticks out a little bit more than this container, and so that is correct. All right, you can use this to measure and see how far out it sticks out in comparison to the container. Okay, so basically we've utilized all of that, and even perspective, linear perspective, 2-point perspective, and so we are going to continue to do that, and I'm going to continue to draw, and we'll start to shape for the next one.